Hello and welcome to This Week of the Movies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Eric.
And summer movie season is about the highs and the lows. Last week we had a high with a pretty anticipated action release in Thunderbolts, which has now officially been retitled The New Avengers on the posters and on Showtimes if you go to your local theater. But this week, more of a grab bag week at theaters. We're going to look at the two biggest releases, Clown in a Cornfield and Fight or Flight. One a horror comedy, one an action movie. Hard to imagine either of them will top the box office. And I don't think either of them topped our feelings for Thunderbolts either. But we will start with Clown in a Cornfield, which I actually ironically saw before I saw Thunderbolts because I watched the screener last weekend to kickstart my long birthday weekend. And I was not disappointed. This one is a Shudder film that is making a release in theaters and then presumably will go to the streaming service. It is actually based on a novel of the same name from Adam Cesar. This one follows a small Midwestern town that has some cornfields and has a pair of new residents, Dr. Glenn Maybrook, played by Aaron Abrams, and his teenage daughter, Quinn, played by Katie Douglas. They arrive. They're looking for a fresh start. Here is Quinn as you know, his wife and her mother has passed away. He's looking for a slower pace of life, a place where they can start things over again. Quinn trying to settle in, make friends, but it is a bit of a strange town, to be sure, and they have some quaint parades and things. It feels like a town that in many ways is trapped in the past. The glory days of the 1990s. Tell this film was probably made by people of our age, or at least my age, who remember that golden age of the 1990s. But the teens gather for a party at night, and this handsome fella pops out of the cornfields as he had decades earlier with some other wayfaring teens, and mayhem ensues. Friendo the Clown. This one, quite an interesting viral marketing campaign. Friendo the Clown has been making pit stops with his little clown truck all around the country. They were in Denver on May 8th. I think today they're actually in Nashville. So hopefully Ricky, if we're lucky, gets to meet Friendo the Clown. But I thought this one had some humor. It comes from director Eli Craig, who had previously worked on Tucker and Dale versus Evil and The Little Evil. He helped co-write this screenplay as well. I had fun with this one. I'm giving it a mild thumbs up. I don't think it was spectacular, but you kind of know what you're going to get here. This kind of slasher horror movie is about what you would expect. There weren't any like spectacular creative kills, but I thought there were some funny comedy things. There's definitely a lot of shots across the bow at Gen Z here. Both with the fact that the teens in this movie make some viral comedy videos that seem to rankle some of the older residents of the town who think they're disrespectful, and things like when they're running from Friendo the Clown, not being able to call for help because all they can find is a rotary phone, or not being able to escape because all they can find is a stick shift vehicle, which my wife pointed out. I was laughing at that, but I also probably would be stymied by a stick shift vehicle. I did not.
Me too.
That. But my favorite part of that scene wasn't that it was the stick shift that stymied her. It was that earlier in the film, her father wanted to do a bonding thing and offered to give her a lesson, and she didn't have, thought he was just bothering her and pushed him off. And what she says, she's like, when your father wants to give you a driving lesson, you fucking do it.
Yeah.
That was the part that made me laugh. Just like these real human moments. The plot's nothing spectacular. I couldn't believe this was based on a novel, to be honest. Which is something I figured out when I was wandering through Target later in the weekend. I saw the book on the shelf and I was like, oh, I didn't know this was a
Mhm.
novel. I would not have maybe guessed that watching it, but I had a fun enough time, and that's kind of what I'm looking for out of these kind of horror movies. But I gather you had a different kind of experience.
Yeah, so to take your example of when the girl shouts, when your father offers to give you a driving license, you fucking do it. Um, you know, a screenwriter wrote that line down and was really proud of, like, I'm gonna send a message to the audience. Like, and you like, there's no way that it was written by someone who's like a Gen Z teenager and whatnot. It was written by, if that line is in the book, then it was written by the author of the book. But I'm assuming a screenwriter who chose to adapt it was like kids, you got to know this. And it just came across like everything about the humor. This movie does seem to be working for people. This movie does seem to be working for people, and I like horror movies and I want to support horror movies. But this fell flat for me on almost every level. The first three, there are three little points that I want to discuss at minimum. One, so you didn't know this was based on a book either.
No.
So what did you think of the main antagonist just deciding to drive away from the movie and disappear and nobody cares?
At the end?
Kevin Durand. He drives away in the dad's car.
Oh, and that I thought they flash forward to later.
And
They
the
made it
dad
sound
is
like
running for mayor.
they were looking for him. No, not her dad is running for mayor.
Yeah, her dad is running for mayor.
Yeah, because they were looking for they make reference at the end that they were looking for him.
I mean, how? Like, and what happened to the other clown that was still alive that just had his hand shot off that the guy pretended was dying to kill the other one in order to like run away?
He probably died.
Did he?
I mean, I would assume he bled out, especially with he was close to the edge when they were working on him.
And that's what the guy kept telling him. But every time he told him that he was close to the edge, it was to get him distracted so he could do something to engineer himself to escape.
Yeah, but then he abandoned him there with no hand, just bleeding.
It was wrapped up in a tourniquet so that he could work on this. I'm just saying, I don't know,
well, it's possible they're trying to. I wonder if it's a series of books. It's possible you leave yourself room to have a franchise. So
right, but they did it in such a bizarre, open way. I mean, the son of the main antagonist, I'm assuming, still lives at home, unless he moved in with his significant other.
With his mom.
Yeah.
They make it pretty clear his mom wouldn't have. No,
they did. They had a scene where the mom is like more understanding and likes, and yeah, like so I guess there is maybe enough clues to kind of piece together, which is like a weird thing that you're taking from the end of the movie that I'm like, I guess I can piece together the clues enough to figure out that it ended somehow.
So the book was released in 2020 and won a Bram Stoker Award for Best Young Adult Novel. And then they
one's in 2022.
In 2021, he announced that he was working on a sequel that would be released. Yeah, Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives.
Yeah. And,
and they're making a Clown in the Cornfield 3, The Church of Friendo.
Which may or may not have already come out. I don't know. But like,
yeah.
But so that's point number one is this movie is really, really focused on what it thinks would be cool to look at or what it thinks would be funny, and it doesn't really care about how it gets there.
Clown in a Cornfield 3 came out in 24.
Yeah. So
but I mean, so I guess my comment would be a lot of the questions you're asking are things you could ask about just about every slasher movie. I mean, I would not say that
usually
a lot of slasher movies have greatly defined logic.
Usually there is a definitive The bad guy is arrested. Oops, they broke out of prison. Or, oh, we've killed the bad guy. Oops, little sting at the end of the credits. They're alive. And, or like, usually, like just something. Usually there is some kind of thing. But like, to, like, okay. All right, so I'm just going to be like in spoiler territory for a minute here. So people who are watching, like if you want to not watch for a little bit, that's fine. Okay. What Kevin Durant's situation is that he like hates his son, and he just hates his son. So he comes up and he has like one kind of valid reason for hating his son, which is the Jason Voorhees mom reason of you should have been watching your sister when she jumped and died. Okay. But then he just, for the benefit of, I guess, the other clowns in the room, is continuing to lie and comes up with that his son also burned down the factory when he, in fact, burned down the factory. Mm-hmm. And so he's not even 100% in league or honest with the other clowns. He's just getting everyone in on killing the teenagers and lying and on the loose and figuring all this out. And it just, like, if the movie is begging that hard for a sequel that it's not willing to give any kind of closure on the main antagonist or driving force of the villainy in the movie, then I can't root for it. And that's, I mean, again, that was just like the first of my 3 points. Like, and the, like, again, it just speaks to someone has heard of a horror movie before, but maybe not necessarily watched a horror movie before, which I know is not true for this team of people because of Tucker and Dale. But so here's the thing. In 1999, 2 movies came out. In 1999, Deep Blue Sea came out, and LL Cool J was set up to be the token black character who dies and made it to the end of the movie. In 1999, A House on Haunted Hill, a Vincent Castle remake with Jeffrey Rush as a Vincent Price character, came out, and actor Taye Diggs made it to the end of the movie with the final girl. In 2025, Clown in a Cornfield has 2 minority characters in its cast, and they kill the darkest one first. And it is so kind of clunky and thoughtless that I expect there to be some sort of meta reference or commentary, but all that happens is the girl who is a minority makes a reference like, oh no, I'm next, like later on in the movie. And we've already memed and joked and taken this thing to the point that if you kill the black person in your cast first, you are going to make your audience recognize, oh, I'm watching a movie that is or isn't aware of this trope, and now I have to think about that. And there's going to be some sort of suspension of disbelief. And the other moment that stuck out to me is in 2008, the movie Tropic Thunder makes a clever joke out of the explosion of, I don't remember the actor's name, but the director of the movie. And Ben Stiller and his crew believe that they're in a fake movie being filmed. And they're like, oh, guys, he didn't blow up. It's fake. I mean, look at this crazy prop. And he pulls up the director's head and he's shaking it around. And Ben Stiller is like, guys, it's just corn syrup and latex. And he like puts his finger in it and licks it. And he's like, warm blood flavored corn syrup. And it's funny because he kind of starts to realize that things are wrong. And there's a clue there because he knows what corn syrup tastes like. So you come all the way to 2025, 17 years later, and you put the same joke in the movie, except the characters are too stupid to know what corn syrup smells and tastes like. Because a girl gets splattered in the face by the head of one of her friends, and she goes, oh, you got corn syrup all over me. And then it's not until the girl checks the pulse of the girl and says, guys, she doesn't have a pulse, that they all scream in terror. They just, scene after scene, like the character juggling fire next to a corn thing, and then they light it on fire, and all the other kids were in on planning it. They all want to record it with their phones, rendering them some of the most dislikable characters for me across the board. all like complaining and believing it's illegal for them to be locked up while they're investigating a crime that nearly killed somebody with a clown falling on somebody. Like all of that stuff is so like grounded that I'm trying to find the joke and I can't find the joke. And I don't know. There's only one thing in this movie that I feel like it did right. And it was how they handled the romantic interest in the movie. Because you have this classic setup for there to be the rich kid in town and the poor kid in town, but they're both like model attractive. And they're both seemingly interested in the lead character who is a girl. And so you're set up to possibly believe that the rich kid is maybe, because he has the music box, secretly a clown that is killing his friends. Or you're meant to believe maybe the kid who's the salt of the earth and is a hunter is like set up to be a red herring and maybe he's going to save the day. But they play on your expectations with that so well and come up with a twist that is so good that I don't want to spoil it. And I actually really enjoyed the romance that comes out of that relationship. But that is the only thing. I think clowns teleporting to where it's convenient for them to be, their shoes making squeaky noises sometimes and not other times because of whatever, characters acting stupid just so that they can have the kind of kills that they want to have, physics not making sense so they can have the kill that they want to have, with the guy holding up weights and the person puts a hacksaw that has a bendable blade over it and uses it as a guillotine. Yeah, it just every scene consistently felt flat and hollow to me. And so I'm giving this like a pretty hard thumbs down. It has that one through line and a little bit of gore that is like fun that would keep me from giving it 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, and I think things just, hit everyone differently because, like I said, I think a lot of those complaints are things you could levy against a number of different slasher films in the genre, and sometimes things just don't work for me either. And I will be, I think a good example recently, I saw a movie called Hell of a Summer, which comes from Finn Wolfhard, and
Yeah.
I think it's Billy Burke. And it's very clear they're trying to pay homage and reference to a lot of classic slasher films. And while I didn't hate it as much as some people, like our friend Ricky, it didn't hit for me, and I didn't find it funny. I just found it ponderous. But there were things in this. Maybe it's because I had such. It could be a matter of expectation too, because I do wonder. Like last week, I told you I liked this. When you go in, but I went in with like no expectations whatsoever, because I was like, description is weird, the title is weird. I am really not a fan of clowns. But I actually don't. It's funny. I like. There's a creepy looking clown mask, but when you get in and the way this whole thing is set up, the clowns weren't that scary. I guess I was not really scared. And so from that standpoint, it probably falls apart, but I was amused by some of the turns. And I actually liked the 3 primary young actors, the 2 male leads and the girl that played Quinn. I liked them. I thought that they were funny. I actually always thought Rust was funny from the beginning. I knew they were just doing something weird. But Vincent Muller and Carson McCormick are the 2 other kind of teen leads. I thought they were funny. And I actually liked Aaron Abrams, who's her father, the doctor. I thought he was funny. Kevin Durand is an actor that once you saw him, I suspected he was going to have something to do with
the bad guys,
the bad guy role.
Yeah.
Will Sasso, the sheriff, I think he's kind of funny. His death sequence was kind of funny. Spoiler alert, he doesn't make it. But I don't think it was a spectacular movie. Um, but for some people, it's probably going to hit okay, and you're going to have fun with it. I think you and I are enough different in age that that may have something to do with it too.
Mm. Are you Gen X or are you millennial?
I would be the first generation of millennial,
Okay.
or what they're now lumping in as
Exennial.
the
The
Goonies
Goonies
generation.
generation.
I like
Nice.
that. I like that better.
That is good. That's a
But I was
great way
born
to put
in
it.
1981,
Okay.
so usually
Yeah.
on every chart, I'm too young to be in Gen X, which makes sense. But I
Yeah.
would be like the first generation of millennial, which makes
Mhm.
you almost too old for that. There, millennial is, if you, that's why I think they're trying to cut in a new generation between them, because millennial, if you take that block all the way out, that's probably too long. I mean, and
Yeah.
with the rapid changes in technology in the world and stuff, like you
Yeah.
have a millennial who was having a high school experience in the 90s and one who probably wasn't old enough to remember TV in the 90s. So
I'm
that,
91.
yeah,
We have never talked about this before, and now I'm realizing that we are distinct chapters
yeah,
apart.
which, and technically we're like the same generation, but our
Yeah.
experience of formative years would be radically different. Like when I hear older people talk about that first time they saw Star Wars on, that was Jurassic Park for me. I was 12, and the magic
Yeah,
of
yeah.
film but you would have been two.
When I
That wouldn't have
Yep.
been the magic of film for
When
you.
when I was 12, we were probably getting high-speed internet for the first time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're probably closer to. I was listening on the Big Picture. They did kind of a younger generation talking about like the movie that cemented them, and these people were all talking about Shrek and being a time when they were like, well, Shrek was 2001. I was in college, and I just thought it was okay, but for you, you'd probably been 10 or 11. That would have hit completely different.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Shrek was
know,
a big one, but Shrek, they played a lot in school.
there are so many mile markers when you're looking at film and stuff. So, like for me, Scream is
Ooh,
a quintessential experience because it came out in 96.
you
I
were
saw it when I was a
16.
junior or sophomore in high school, and it was mind-blowing. The 20th
Yeah.
anniversary release of the Star Wars trilogy, I saw that when they put it in theaters. I was a junior in high school. I took Fridays off of school to go and see, like episode 1 got released the summer in May, the year I graduated high school. It's just all these different kind of
Oh, man.
markers. Your age and where you are kind of informs different things, I think. Like I remember seeing Heat, which is still a mind-blowing movie for me. I was a freshman in high school. I mean, it
Mhm.
just was like
Yeah, I
it's a
knew.
little bit something different, and those movies change a little bit generation to generation. 10 years
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a lot when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, but when you're talking about the foundational films and the way they hit for you, and the way, because I think honestly we're more forgiving of flaws for the movies that wowed us when we were between 10 and 20 than you
Mm,
get to be when you're over 20. And
yeah,
that's, I was just a little too old for that sense of wonder about Harry Potter. I still enjoy Harry Potter, but those
fair.
movies did not start coming out till I was in college.
Mm,
And I had already been an adult in the workforce for like 7 years when the last Harry Potter movie came out in theaters. I was a professional film reviewer by then. So
cool.
it just does a little, it's kind of interesting. And I do wonder if some of the way those jokes are playing, like I am the age of some of those parents, they're probably they're supposed to be a little bit older. They're probably late 40s,
Yeah.
50s, but I'm 44. I'm not, I'm closer to relating to them than probably to relating to those teens, and that
Yeah.
10-year gap between us probably, I've learned a lot the last couple of weeks. I've been subbing in a high school classroom,
Mhm.
and I've learned a lot of things, but I've also realized, it has now been 25 years since I graduated from college, and I need to admit that.
Yeah.
that times have changed. Or it's been 25 years since I went to college. So times have
Yeah.
changed, and the way you so some of those jokes that I thought were amusing about the things that maybe they don't know. I don't have a TikTok account, but when you're talking about like you've seen them dunking on people on TikTok and you're kind of tired of them dunking on
Well,
younger
no, it
millennials
goes
and
both
stuff,
ways.
it's
It goes both
probably
ways.
has something to do with a life experience too. And so
Yeah.
this might actually be one of those horror comedies that plays better for 40 and over, which is ironic since
They're
the
depicted
book,
as the
well, also since the book won a teen writing award. It kind of makes me
yeah, for young
my
adult.
wife will murder me if I get the book, but it kind of makes me want to get the book and read it and
Yeah.
see like tonally what is movie and what is,
Yeah,
you know,
because
what was
this felt
Eli
such like
Craig's
a
sense of
movie
humor
script.
and what was, you know, is it
Yes.
aside from a basic concept, do they translate like I haven't brought myself to start it because I feel partially responsible for the Pope dying, but I purchased Conclave on Easter Sunday, and the following morning the Pope died.
Oh,
And so I
jeez.
was like, well, I want to read the book, but I feel like I brought this cataclysmic event about with my purchasing. So who knows what happens if I buy a clown in a cornfield.
Oh,
Well, the other big release this week features our
oh yeah, we
friend
got another movie to talk about.
Josh Hartnett, and that is the movie Fight or Flight. This one, an action film. Some of the producers of John Wick are behind this, so you get the sense that they're going for a lot of big action here. It comes from director James Madigan, who had previously directed on the TV series The Runaways, but had worked on some visual effects for things like Iron Man 2, The Meg, Transformers, Rise of the Beast. So knows his way around an action film. But essentially, if you remember a few years ago, the action movie Bullet Train, this is a lot like Bullet Train, only set on an airplane. Here we have Josh Hartnett, kind of an out of favor agent who is given a potential chance to work his way back into the good graces of his agency by taking this assignment to try and find somebody of import. We'll just call her MacGuffin because that's essentially what her character is. On a plane, actually doesn't even know if it's a man or a woman or who it is. So I've ruined the plot for you. But essentially ends up on a transatlantic flight where they discover shortly after takeoff that it's populated by a bunch of professional killers. They have his picture, so he becomes a target. He has to keep the target of his mission safe and try to get the plane back safely, and violence and hilarity ensue. This one, a pretty tight hour and 40 minutes, maybe an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't wear out its welcome. Plenty of action sequences. Josh Hartnett really turned into kind of a different phase in his career. We
With
saw him
Trap.
play kind of an interesting killer in Trap. A lot of people comparing this to Trap. Totally, I don't feel like they're similar. And I don't
No.
even feel like their characters are similar. I think it's just that Josh Hartnett seems to be having fun. And
That.
seems to be having fun in this movie. The action sequences are copious, the claustrophobic nature of how it's set up, and this one ends with a stinger that makes you think like they have hopes this could become something of a franchise. So
Mhm.
we'll see. I'm giving this one a mild thumbs up. Not my favorite kind of genre. I don't think it's as clever as Bullet Train, which is
No,
the
Bullet
movie
Train is amazing.
that it's getting a lot of comparison to. I don't think it's totally trying to go for this. It reminds me more of there is a film that was on streaming that came from Gareth Evans, the director of The Raid, that dropped on Netflix April 25th called Havoc. That is just an all out gang style action movie with Tom Hardy. The action sequences and things like that reminded me more of that kind of movie and that kind of style. I like this one better. Havoc, I would probably have given a mild thumbs down because it was too ponderous, but this one pretty straightforward. They add like Katie Sackhoff as the anchor on the ground, although that was the least interesting part of the story to me and ultimately seems
Yes.
almost irrelevant by the time we get to the end. But I like Josh Hartnett here. I liked his main co-star. Let me look up the name. Played by Sharitha Chandran. I hope I pronounced that even close to right. Um, I thought it was a fun ride. This is probably what you're looking for a lot in summer. I think the one thing I would say about both these movies is you don't really have to do any deep thinking. In fact, it's probably better if you're not doing any deep thinking. You just go get a little bit of escape, about 90 minutes of entertainment.
Yep.
You're good to go. But I think you enjoyed Fight or Flight a little more than the first one I had you watch.
Yeah. I did. This was a blast. It delivers on what it is said it is in the trailer. There are some sludgy scenes of exposition. I really could do without everything that's happening on the ground. At one point, there's this random non sequitur of them just like dunking on people who are meditating, and like it's like just very confusing to me. I don't know. I if like flight risk earlier, the girl has like that does a much better job of like keeping to the plane and delivering on things. I wish they had done something a little bit closer to that. But Josh Hartnett is amazing. The only other thing I could probably do without, even though I actually did enjoy the comedy of it quite a bit, was the Snapchat filter drug use thing with all the colors and all that. That was a little bit too campy looking, or too like half-assed in the CGI department for what they were trying to do to me.
I think the pompous first class steward made me laugh too.
Yeah. Everything about being on the plane and everything about working their way and like hiding and doing this, and Josh Hartnett just like relishing his performance is great. I do think there's a movie like this that comes out once a year, and I think last year it was The Fall Guy, which was all directed by the guy who made Bullet Train. And like once in a while you get Nobody, or you get just
which we're getting so we're kind of bookending the summer because this movie comes out this weekend. Nobody 2 comes out August 15th. So you're kind of getting probably two halves of this bookending your summer.
Yeah, an action comedy romp comes along, and it just delivers on the things that it promises you're gonna get really well. And I think I would like to see Josh Hartnett do more action stuff. I love that he is sort of celebrating this career that he deliberately avoided for a significant period of his life. Where he's like this leading man who's able to show up in projects, but he kind of chooses these not too mainstream, not big studio contract projects for him to show up in, where he just gets to be an action star, a thriller, suspense serial killer. Oppenheimer he gets to be in. Like, he just is being this sort of star quality character actor, and I'm here for it. I will watch whatever he decides to be in next.
Yeah, I think you and I both like to trap.
Yeah,
both liked Trap last year. I think a lot of people like Trap. Probably one of the better recent phase M. Night Shyamalan films. This one has its own kinetic energy. I'll be curious to see if they make a sequel, because they definitely don't end it in a closed position.
No, yeah. Well, they close in like a fade to black kind of way.
Yeah.
And then they just decide to open on like, hey, we can keep going. You're like,
yeah, almost like a tag in a Marvel movie. But
yeah.
Yeah, we had fun with this one. I think you're getting a couple of different kinds of options. We have a couple of weeks here between major tentpole blockbusters of summer, which can be nice. And summer offers a lot of different things. Horror is kind of evergreen. Action movies usually get a good shot in the summer. So far, we haven't gotten any great releases for the kids. You're probably going to have to wait till Memorial Day weekend for
Yeah.
that. Maybe not taking your 5-year-old to the theater the next few weeks.
Oh
I don't
well,
think Thunderbolts
Minecraft.
worked for the. Yeah, but that Minecraft's now, 6 or 7 weeks out.
Yeah.
I think it's still on a couple of screens, but it actually came to VOD or
Yeah. Yeah.
comes to VOD on Tuesday. I think the next kind of big summer tentpole release for
Lilo and
kids will be
Stitch.
Lilo and Stitch, which is Memorial Day weekend. Or, if you're like the parent that I remember when I was in college as a freshman, we went to a midnight screening of Hannibal. Very family friendly film, and a guy had brought what I could only estimate to be a 4 or 5-year-old child to that. I had a lot of questions. It was a midnight start time, not ideal, and not a great movie for kids. Begins
No.
with a disembowelment, so everybody's parenting style a little bit different.
Yeah. To be fair, when I saw Abigail, there was a girl who couldn't have been close to age 10 who was actually so well versed in horror that she was calling shots in the movie, like predicting things that were going to happen. And my friend Curtis and I were kind of sitting there just kind of like frozen and kind of impressed. And
kind of impressed, kind of horrified.
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's good.
Well, it is time for Explain a Movie Plot Poorly. A trip to Las Vegas leads to dental work.
The Hangover.
Oh, that was too easy for you.
The tooth. Because Stu has that's like an infamous story about that movie. Is he actually was missing the tooth, so they got to use it as a prop.
Oh, I didn't know he was really.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened to poor Ed Helms. Well, before we get out of here, I want to shout out one other thing, which is
okay.
Poor Ed Helms. Still one of the greatest summer anthems ever. What do tigers dream of?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that movie is incredible. The 2 sequels are incredibly bad.
Oh yeah,
you always
Hangover
you
came
watch...
out when I was graduating high school.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. I think I was a film reviewer by then. This was 2009, but it was so magical. And then they're telling you they're making a sequel, and even when I rewatch them, it's like, this one's so good. Maybe I was too harsh on number 2. And you fire it up, and you're like, nope, no, I wasn't too harsh. No, some movies don't need sequels. You probably couldn't recapture that magic. Like,
yeah.
The best follow-up to The Hangover is Bridesmaids.
Yeah.
Which finds a way to be equally funny in its own setup and sequences. And what are you going to do? Well, it is Mother's Day this weekend. Spoiler alert, you still have one day to go get a card or to make a phone call or to book a reservation at a restaurant if you may have forgotten. But Netflix yesterday dropped a movie that is very much themed toward this, and it is called Nonas. I saw this movie. I had not watched any trailers, which is probably the best way. I'm starting to think I need to go into more movies blind. Might help the experience. This one's actually based on a true story, which I also didn't know until I was watching the post credits of the film. But basically about a guy who works for the MTA in New York, loses his mother, who was a beloved part of his life and was a great Italian chef, and decides to take the inheritance he's been given and try to open up a restaurant in her honor, and recruits a group of Italian grandmas to be the chefs there. Among them, you can see Lorraine Bracco, Susan Sarandon, and Talia Shire. Are in that group. This movie also has quite a fun supporting cast. The fourth of the chefs is Brenda Vaccaro, who is in there. This one has quite a fun supporting cast, including Joe Manganiello, Drea Di Matteo, and Linda Cardinelli.
Nice.
It has been a while since I like really enjoyed the heck out of a Vince Vaughn film. You know, I appreciate him as an actor. He does a lot of kind of uh comedy things that I have enjoyed in the past, but sometimes of late have been hit or miss. This is a more earnest kind of character, a more earnest kind of performance, but there is a little bit of sweetness in the comedy, and I really enjoyed him in the lead here. I thought he was fun. I thought the whole movie was fun. It had its own sense of charm and wonder, and I really enjoyed this. This was I gave it 3.5 stars, and I think it is a nice movie that you could watch, with your wife, your mom, your grandma for Mother's Day. A nice little streaming film at home that I thought was worth checking out.
Cool.
So, we have run the gamut. If you want to watch clowns cutting people apart with a chainsaw, we have that. If you want to watch Josh Hartnett
cutting
going
people
ham on
with a
some people in
chainsaw.
a plane, you have that. Or if
With
you
a
want to
chainsaw.
watch Vince Vaughn trying to make some delightful pasta sauces
With a chainsaw.
Susan Sarandon. No, he does have a carving knife. Susan Sarandon and Talia Shire. Um, we have that. Lorraine Bracco. If he had brought out a chainsaw, it would have really tied things together.
It really would have. It's kind of a missed opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, there is cutting. There is fire, and they catch the sheep's head on fire and almost burns down their restaurant. So, yeah. But the Nona's also ends with a sweet montage of the photos and some videos of the actual guy who opened the restaurant and the grandmas who helped serve at the restaurant, which actually is still in existence and open on Staten Island today. So, it was a sweet story, one that I didn't have. I watched a couple of different streaming films yesterday. That one was sweet and delightful. The other one left me cold. So, I also watched Hard Eyes this week, and not sorry I missed that in theaters.
All right.
Yeah, it's been quite a week for doing some 2025 catch up. But that'll do it for us this week. If you just haven't gotten enough of horror films and you just have that deep longing in your heart, well, you're in luck, because next week's major release is Final Destination Bloodlines, a reboot of the Final Destination franchise. Do you know Final Destination turns 25 this year? Or actually already turned 25 because it was March 2000 release.
We just watched it. My wife watched it for the first time.
I assume you had seen it before.
Oh, I've seen
It's
all
been a
of them
while.
before, unfortunately.
I saw that one when I was in college, so I always kind of remember. And I think the original Final Destination still holds up as fun.
1,
Number 2's
2,
okay,
and 5.
I may never have seen 5. I kind of gave up for a while there. I got burned out on
was the
horror
3D
movies
one
in
that
the
was
aughts.
like,
man, I am not sorry
the aughts
that
was a
we're that
terrible
we've
time
moved
for
off
horror.
that 3D phase.
Yeah.
Everything was in friggin' 3D there for a while. But yeah, I think I got burned out on horror a little bit in the aughts because I was out of college and I was getting older. Now I don't love horror the same way I did when I was in my teens and 20s, which makes sense because the target audience for most of those films is like
people in their teens and 20s.
15 to 25. But I appreciate them a good one in a different way now. But there was a while there, like late 20s through my 30s, where I was starting to wonder if I had become Clint Eastwood, just asking those movies to get off my lawn.
No, I think the world kind of agrees with you. Like with the 2000s, with the era of torture porn and like
I could not do the longest movie review I've ever written was
terrible
about the remake of The Hills
slashers.
Have Eyes, which I gave 0 stars because I found it so offensive. But I'm pretty sure I did like a 1,600 word screed about that film.
Wow.
I was so mad. That still rubs me the wrong way. But we all have our ones we can't do. I'm hoping the trailer for Final Destination Bloodlines I thought looked interesting. Also, the final screen performance for our man Tony Todd.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping he has a little bit of a fun part. That's a tie back to the original Final Destination. If you have not seen the original Final Destination or any of the Final Destinations, they are on Max right now streaming. And it's worth checking out. At least, what did you say? 1, 2. I know 1 and 2 I liked, but you said 5 was good. I think that was
5.
2009, right? So we have not seen this franchise back in.
It might be
Might be an 11.
2011.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think 4 was in 9. That might have been what killed my
Yeah.
zest for
3, if you already enjoy the franchise, 3 had this really cool novelty on the DVD, if you can still get your hands on it, where you can choose the order of scenes. You get to choose, do they go to this place or this place? And like you kind of get to mess with the movie. But Ramona Flowers, what's her name?
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead she's the lead in 3. So
that one is that the one with the roller coaster?
Yeah, that's the roller coaster one. It's okay. It's good. Like, I would, if I was going to tell someone watch one of the movies, I would say watch 1, 2, or 5. But then if you like them, go ahead and watch 3. 4 is horrendous. 4 is so bafflingly bad.
And I think that was the one in 2009 that I'm looking at their timeline. 3 was 2006.
Yeah.
The Final Destination, which
the 4th
ended up being a funny title considering that it's not, was 2009. That's probably why I was thinking that's where my zest for.
Yeah, go into 5 unspoiled and watch it, and you will have fun.
I mean, you can tell 4 is bad. I had forgotten. Krista Allen literally plays a character that's called MILF.
There you go.
It's like, have you run out of ideas? Nah, we good. But yes, 5 was 2011, so it's been 14 years. That's not as long a layoff as some of the franchises that are coming back this summer. I am still reasonably pumped for I Know What You Did Last Summer, but that would have those movies are from when I was in high school.
Yeah, that's
it's the same excitement I have for Scream 7 that has Kevin Williamson coming back to direct Campbell and Brittany Cox. It's like, inject it back into my high school veins.
And they're bringing like I'm pretty sure they're resetting. Like they may or may not be ignoring the continuity of 5 and 6.
I assume David Arquette's going to pop up the same way that what's his name popped up in
Randy in 3.
Randy popped up in 3 as a video.
I don't know, man.
Or I guess they could do a flashback. I doubt they're just.
See, that's the thing is there is this trend that they haven't commented on in horror. They tried to do it with Scream 5, where that movie was just called Scream, but they actually included the continuity of the sequels. The trend that has happened with Halloween and with
well, the reason I don't think they're doing that is because some of the like core 5 are going to appear. Core 4 are going to appear. The 2 Meeks twins are in Scream 7.
Okay.
So I don't think they're just erasing it.
Okay.
But the Meeks family would have tied back to Nev Campbell and Brittany Cox through Randy. So, I mean, they were kind of the legacy ones. They had to have done something to right around missing the 2 that they tried to put at the center.
Yeah. There's this part of me that we just watched Scream 6 finally because my wife had not finished it, and I enjoyed that one despite it being like kind of terribly written.
Yeah.
There's this little like inkling, like a little part of me that was like, they are making a big public announcement that Matthew Lillard is going to be back and not leaving that to be a surprise for the movie.
Well, and they made a big public announcement that Scott Foley's back too, and he clearly died in one of them, and David Arquette, and he clearly
He
died in
died
one of
in
them.
one of them. So I just like I had this little like paranoid thing that there's no way it's possible. There's no way they're going to be doing this. But like, what if they had pulled a publicity stunt and claimed to have fired Melissa Barrera so that she could come back like as Ghostface?
Oh, I mean, I suppose it's certainly
It's not in the realm of something that could never happen on Earth, but it's not going to happen. Like that's not real. But
yeah, I think what and they have continuity because James Vanderbilt worked on the screenplay, and he did 5 and 6.
They need to get rid of the writers from 5 and 6. I know a lot of
Well,
people
okay,
like the
so
movie.
he's story,
Direction
and
is great.
Gary Busick is the credited. No, yeah, it's the writers from 5 and 6.
Ah, gosh.
So I that's why I said I don't think they're trying to dump those movies as if they never happened.
Yeah.
Because Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding are in it as Chad Meeks Martin and Mindy Meeks Martin. So
Mm.
I know they
Oh, it was
they
Texas
were.
Chainsaw Massacre. That's the one that tried to do the thing from Halloween. Whatever.
I tried to block that out. Thanks for
That was so bad.
bringing up some bad memories here. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of, not all horror movie hits, as evidenced by our takes on Clown in a Cornfield. So, but hopefully, Final Destination will be fun. We'll see what the rest of summer holds. We're only a couple weeks away from the final Mission Impossible, which is your warning that you have 7 films to watch to catch up on between now and Memorial Day weekend. Actually, 6. I'm just going to go ahead and say if you do not watch Mission Impossible 2, it will be no loss for them.
Yeah, they don't seem to be referencing it when they're doing like a highlight reel.
We're bringing back connections to everything.
Yeah.
Not you, John Woo.
Yeah.
Although that face peeling technology that they've continued to use in all the movies originated in.
Oh no,
Did
used
he do it in the first one? Okay.
Yeah, right at the very beginning, he pulls off, and then he
But
uses
there's
it to
nothing
pretend to
from
be John
2.
Voight. Yeah, there's
Unless they bring
nothing.
back the Limp Bizkit version of the theme song just for fun.
Oh my gosh,
That would
Oh
be
my
a
gosh.
hilarious pull.
If that happens in the movie, I will walk out of the theater and pay for another ticket. Like oh my gosh, that would be so incredible.
Well, on that note, we've had some laughs, we've had some fun, we had some slayings, a lot of slayings in the movies we watched this week, but also some Italian grandmas. So we've given you the full gamut. We'll hope to give you more next week. We will also check back in on The Last of Us probably next week and see a temperature check on how we're feeling in the post Pedro Pascal era.
Yeah.
Which, if the internet's to be believed, not great would be the answer. But we'll see how it goes. Until then, hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, and we'll see you at the movies.